The Sociology of Marriage. What if I told you that marriage isn't just about love? Not just about romance, weddings, or finding the one? What if marriage is actually one of the most powerful social institutions ever created, shaping economies, gender roles, inheritance, sexuality, even the way we define family itself? And what if the way we marry today says more about society than it does about love? Welcome to Midnight Sociology. If you enjoy exploring the hidden structures behind everyday life, like and subscribe. Tonight, we're stepping into one of the most intimate and most political institutions of all, the sociology of marriage. Part 1. Marriage is not just personal, it's social. We tend to think of marriage as deeply personal, a proposal, a wedding, a private commitment between two people. But sociology asks a different question. Who decided what marriage is supposed to look like? Marriage isn't just a feeling, it's a socially constructed institution, meaning society defines its rules, roles, expectations, and benefits. Marriage regulates who can have sex with who inherits property, who raises children, who has legal rights over whom, how economic resources are shared. It structures social life in quiet but powerful ways. And like all social institutions, it changes over time. Part 2. A brief historical reality check. For most of human history, marriage wasn't about love. It was about property, alliances, survival, and social stability. In many societies, women were legally treated as property, transferred from father to husband. Marriage solidified economic arrangements and preserved family status. Romantic love as the primary reason for marriage, that's relatively modern. Today, we marry for emotional fulfillment. Historically, people married for survival and structure. That shift alone tells us something profound. Marriage evolves with society. Part 3. Structural Functionalism. Marriage as Social Glue. From a structural functionalist perspective, marriage is essential for maintaining social order. It organizes reproduction, economic cooperation, the socialization of children. Sociologist George Murdoch argued that marriage traditionally serves four core functions: sexual regulation, reproduction, education and socialization of children, and economic cooperation. Even if these functions look different today, they still underpin how society values marriage. Think about tax benefits, healthcare access, immigration sponsorship, inheritance law. Marriage still organizes legal and economic systems. From this view, marriage isn't just romantic, it's stabilizing. It creates predictable roles. Predictability creates order. Part 4. Conflict Theory. Marriage and Inequality. Now, let's shift lenses. From a social conflict perspective, marriage hasn't always been neutral or stabilizing. It has often reinforced inequality. Historically, women's labor was unpaid within the home. Men controlled financial resources. Divorce laws favored husbands. Property ownership flowed through male lines. Feminist sociologists argue that marriage institutionalized gender roles: husband as breadwinner, wife as homemaker. Even today, despite progress, women still perform more unpaid domestic labor in heterosexual marriages. Marriage can reproduce inequality through wage gaps, career sacrifices for childcare, emotional labor expectations. So we have to ask, is marriage a partnership of equals? Or does it quietly reflect larger economic and gender hierarchies? In modern dual-income households, many couples negotiate roles more flexibly, but the negotiation itself reflects shifting economic power. When women entered the workforce in large numbers, marriage had to adapt. Institutions change when power shifts. Part 5. Symbolic Interactionism. What does husband even mean now? Zoom in further.
Forget history and economics for a moment. Let's talk about daily life. From a symbolic interactionist perspective, marriage is created through everyday interactions. What does it mean to be a good husband, a supportive wife, a modern partner? These roles aren't fixed, they're negotiated. One couple might split bills 50-50, another pools everything. One stays home, another hires childcare. One prioritizes careers, another prioritizes flexibility. Marriage today is less scripted, and that means couples must constantly define and redefine their expectations. Arguments over chores, finances, parenting styles, those aren't just personal conflicts, they're negotiations of social roles. We are writing the meaning of marriage in real time. Part 6. Social Exchange Theory. Is marriage worth it? Now let's get uncomfortably honest. Social exchange theory suggests that people evaluate relationships based on perceived costs and benefits. Emotional support, financial stability, companionship, shared goals, balanced against stress, loss of independence, financial strain, and unequal labor. If the costs outweigh the rewards, people leave. This perspective helps explain rising divorce rates in the late 19th century. In the past, people stayed in unhappy marriages because divorce was stigmatized. Women lacked financial independence. Legal systems made separation difficult. Today, leaving is more feasible. Marriage is less permanent and more voluntary, which raises a fascinating question. Is modern marriage weaker or is it stronger because it must be chosen every day? Part 7. The Rise of Individualism. One of the biggest shifts in modern marriage is individualism. We no longer marry because we must. We marry because we want personal fulfillment. That's a radical transformation. Marriage used to be about duty. Now it's about self-actualization. We expect our spouse to be best friend, romantic partner, co-parent, financial partner, therapist, travel companion, emotional support system. That's a lot of pressure for one relationship. The more we expect marriage to fulfill us emotionally, the more fragile it can become when reality disappoints. Marriage has shifted from economic survival to emotional satisfaction, and emotional satisfaction is harder to standardize. Part 8. Modern Trends. Marriage is changing. Let's look at some key trends. Rise in cohabitation. In the 1970s, fewer than 1 million unmarried couples lived together in the U.S. By 2016, that number rose to about 18 million. Living together before or instead of marriage has become normalized. Cohabitation allows couples to test compatibility without legal commitment. Some see it as weakening marriage. Others see it as modern pragmatism. Delayed marriage. People are marrying later than ever. Why? Student debt, housing costs, career instability, extended education. Marriage has shifted from a starting point to a capstone achievement. Instead of marrying young and building together, many now build first and marry once stable. This reflects broader economic pressures, not just changing values. Diverse family structures. Marriage is no longer limited to one model. We see same-sex marriages, blended families, child-free marriages, single-parent households, multi-generational living arrangements. The definition of family has expanded. Sociologists often note that the presence of children is what most strongly defines a household as family, not marital status alone. Marriage is no longer the legitimate path to family life, and that's a profound cultural shift. Negotiated gender roles. As women's workforce participation increased, rigid gender roles weakened. Now, many marriages involve shared income, shared childcare, shared domestic responsibilities. But shared doesn't always mean equal. Negotiation has replaced tradition, and negotiation requires communication, which not everyone was socialized to practice. Modern marriage requires skills previous generations didn't need in the same way. Part 9. Is marriage declining or transforming? Headlines often say, marriage is dying. But sociologists ask a better question. Is marriage declining or is it evolving? Marriage is no longer mandatory for survival. It's optional. And when something becomes optional, its meaning changes. Instead of being a social obligation, marriage becomes a personal project. It becomes about identity, about lifestyle, about values. In some ways, that makes it more intimate. In other ways, more fragile.
Part 10. Why marriage still carries enormous social weight. It affects tax systems, healthcare access, legal rights, child custody, immigration status, wealth accumulation. Married couples statistically accumulate more wealth over time, partly because the institution supports economic pooling. So even if cultural meanings shift, structural consequences remain. Marriage still organizes society, just differently than before. Closing reflection. So next time you attend a wedding, or scroll past engagement photos, or debate whether marriage is worth it, remember, you're not just witnessing a personal decision. You're watching an institution adapt to modernity. Marriage tells us how we distribute power, how we define love, how we raise children, how we structure inequality, how individualistic we've become. And maybe the most fascinating part is this: marriage isn't disappearing. It's being renegotiated by millions of couples every single day. Until next time, keep questioning what feels natural, because most of it is social.